it just gets old watching the same team win the whole thing. Sorry, that was really arrogant, wasn't it? It was kind of fun to say that.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking back at Monday's action, previewing Tuesday's games, looking at some Anthony Davis news and talking about some injuries across the league. Michael Bolton, despite being asleep when he was crossed to live on Australian TV, he's ready for Australian podcasts.
Let's get to it.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for not falling asleep at the wheel as you get ready for this show. Just a quick note, trade deadline coming up on Thursday afternoon for you guys in the States. That'll be Friday morning for those of us here in Australia. I will be at this stage 99% sure, you're close to 100%, but I don't want to go 100%. Let's go 99%. I will be hosting the Locked On Podcast Network's live trade deadline coverage. Myself and David Locke will be hosting that. We'll be going live on this YouTube channel or on my YouTube channel. It will be streamed there, probably streamed in a couple of other places as well. We'll be reacting live to the trades as they go down and bringing in Locked On podcast hosts and experts across the league to get their takes on the situation. So it'll be real life NBA trade implications and fantasy implications mixed in there as well. So make sure you are tuning in there and seeing that. I'll be tweeting it out. David will be tweeting it out. It'll be right across the network. But that'll be the Locked On Podcast Network Trade Deadline Spectacular, and I will be one of the hosts alongside David. We'll be hosting that show on Thursday for you guys. Let's just cover a couple of things here. Anthony Davis. I woke up this morning. I didn't think a trade was going to happen by the trade deadline. I woke up this morning and went, you know what? I'm getting to over 50% likelihood that a trade is going to go down for Davis by Thursday. The Lakers throwing in all their assets, including Lance Stevenson, Alonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart's name's thrown in there, Michael Beasley, a couple of first-round picks, a whole bunch of stuff for Anthony Davis and to get off of Solomon Hill's contract. And I thought that's really interesting. I think this is going to happen. And then some pushback later in the day makes me think, you know what, this trade's not going to go down. The Pelicans, plenty of people in that organization do not want to trade Anthony Davis to the Los Angeles Lakers, and you can talk about that being petty or whatever it is you want, but that's how it seems like at this point. Anthony Davis has been medically cleared to practice and return. He won't be playing before the trade deadline. I also can, no matter what you think about it being in Anthony Davis's best interest or the Pelicans' best interest, I still think that he will play this season even if he isn't traded, because it is a terrible, terrible look for the league, and they will be absolutely rightfully pissed off if he just doesn't play for the next 2 months, to have one of their best 5 players, best 3 players, just not play because he cracked the shits with 18 months left on his contract. I just cannot see that being the case. So we'll see how that all plays out, of course, but at this point, it's not looking ideal for an Anthony Davis trade, but again, I've swung both ways, in terms of that trade today. If that trade was to go down, there's just tons of value opening up, and it would cause a big domino effect with guys like Nick Mirotic, with Julius Randle, Alfred Payton, Etuan Moore. Who knows what's going to happen? Jahlil Okafor's a guy that we want to hold on to in New Orleans. Kenrick Williams started today over Solomon Hill because he's significantly better than Solomon Hill. And is he even better than Etuan Moore? That's a real possibility as well. So there's some value in Kenrick Williams in New Orleans as well. Frank Jackson as a deeper league type of a guy. There's just tons of different scenarios here with this Pelicans situation. And of course, if that trade does go through, so many rotation spots open up in LA that boosts the value of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Any of the young guys that stick around, maybe Josh the Hitman Hart doesn't get dealt in that scenario. All these random G Leaguers, they're going to have to call up free agents. Maybe Corey Brewer finds himself on a significant role after the Sixers decided not to sign him to a rest of the season deal. There could be many, many situations and trades go down that could open up value there in LA, depending on how this situation goes. So that's the latest on Anthony Davis and the trade deadline scenarios. I thought it was going to happen. Now I'm thinking it's not going to happen. By the time I wake up tomorrow, that trade could already have gone down. So lots of weird stuff happening in that situation with Davis and the New Orleans Pelicans. Let's go into the regular portion of the show now.
Monstrous line of the night.
The monstrous line of the night. It's just stunning that it is James Harden, of course. 44 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 triples, 3 steals, and a block. 58% shooting. 15 of 26 is ridiculous. 9 of 11 from the line. It doesn't get any better than that. He doesn't get any better than what Harden is doing. I don't need to keep rehashing the stats, but he is still averaging 41 points per game over his last 29 games. 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 5.5 triples. These are absolutely absurd numbers, and they will be just powering your team on, assuming you've got a semi-competent team around him. Your fantasy numbers are looking crazy. And yes, Chris Paul was back and he played 33 minutes, but Eric Gordon was out of this one, so that put a little bit more load onto Harden's shoulders, and he was able to again carry this team with a big performance and a big decent enough line to get them over the line against the Phoenix Suns. So Jim Harden is your monstrous line of the night. The next one, can't find the button.
Waiver wire line of the night.
It is also the deep leaguer of the night, and it is Stanley Johnson of the Detroit Pistons. Stan has had a couple of these weird performances this season. It was only 25 minutes, but 21 points with 4 triples, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block on 7 of 10 shooting. This is a guy who has never shot over 40% for a season. He's at his rookie season 38, the next season 35, his next season 38, and this season you wouldn't get it, you wouldn't guess, no way, 38%. Yes, he's hitting 80% of his free throws, but still 28% from 3. He is just a disaster as a shooter, but when it comes together like in this game, that's fantastic. 21 points here in his previous few games, 3, 0, 8, 2, 0, 4, 2. So the combination of what he's done in his previous 7 games doesn't even add up to 21 points. He'd been okay as a steals type streaming guy, but this is no indication to me that we're looking to add Stanley Johnson outside of the scenarios where we already would have had him, and that is probably just 20 team leagues at this point. Nice performance, really strong, but yeah, even in 16 team leagues, I'm not scurrying to add Stanley Johnson based on this performance. It was good, but it's 100% unsustainable given the history with Johnson and his inability to hit really any shots at all.
Young gun of the night.
This one is one that we need to be actioning. It's the young gun of the night, and Marvin Bagley played 31 minutes for the Kings in their blowout victory over the Spurs. 24 and 12. He hit a 3, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 3 blocks for Bagley. He is rostered in 68% of Yahoo leagues, and if you can add up pretty quickly or subtract, whoever the case may be, means he's available in 32% of leagues. He should be rostered in every single 12-team league, and he should be rostered in every single 10-team league at the moment. He's a top 60 player over the last 2 weeks. He's been much better than I anticipated he would be. Now, some of that top 60 over the last 2 weeks is because he's shooting 78 from the line, and I think that is a problem for him. Just at 67% on the season. There's been some fluky free throw shooting performances there, but that doesn't matter. He's a big rebounding guy. He's blocking shots. He's scoring. Today's game came with some assists, and he doesn't normally bring assists at all. In fact, that's the highest assist total he's had all season, and it was only 4. So there's a little bit of flukiness in there. He's had steals in 3 consecutive games, double-doubles in 3 consecutive games. He is a must-roster player. It has been clear that over the last 2 to 3 weeks I've been talking about him as a must-roster guy, and you're starting to see it come into fruition now, and he should be rostered in every 12. I can't say it in many other different ways. You need to make sure that Marvin Bagley is not sitting on your waiver wire.
I tell a man's not hot.
His teammate is the dud of the night, and that is Bogdan Bogdanovic, and he is really struggling at the moment. You know I'm a big Bogdan fan, but he is in a real slump. 6 points in 21 minutes, 2 rebounds, 2 assists on 3 of 10 shooting. He was really hot for a stretch, but over the last 2 weeks, he is not even a top 190 player. I still think he can be close to a top 100 guy, but in a 10-team league with many, many opportunities set to open up in the next couple of days due to the trade deadline, you've got to have a handle on who's your worst player, and it might be Bogdan. Who are your worst 2 players? It's almost going to assuredly be he's going to be one of those guys. And that means that he's droppable. For as much as we like him, as much as I like him, the trend down in production is a real worry. He can't hit shots. He's under 40% from the field over the last month. He's dealt with toe injuries this season, which I am sure are impacting his shot. Just look at Otto Porter in Washington, who can't hit anything, and he's been dealing with toe issues. You have lower leg problems, it does impact your shot. Gary Harris in Denver, a prime example of that as well. And I think that's really bothering Bogdan. Came back from knee surgery, hurt his toe. All this stuff seems to be interlinked, and I think that when opportunities open up for someone, you should be looking at Bogdan as an expendable guy. For as much as I love him, especially in 10-team leagues, and in 12, I think you really should be considering that. We are in the situation now where we're heading into fantasy playoffs. In a couple of weeks' time, they're going to kick off, and we're going to be in a situation where we don't care about rest of season. We don't care about upside. We're talking about, what are you doing now? How are you producing now? Are your games on quality days? Do you have a lot of games in the playoffs? Are you producing? Are you dealing with nagging injuries? If you are, piss off out of my team and let's get someone else in. And as much as I love Bogdan, I can't say that enough, he's in that category now. He's not a must-drop player. No one really, unless they're out for the season. Victor Oladipo is a must-drop player in redraft leagues because he's not playing. Because you're never just dropping someone for no reason. But if a guy is out there, if Marvin Bagley's out there and you've got Bogdan Bogdanovic, make the switch. That's a move that you make. A guy moving up, a guy moving down, a guy coming back and looking strong, a guy struggling. You know, those sort of moves are things that you can be looking at and can considering. And yeah, Bogdan is clearly in that zone to me of that drop zone. The plus-minus goats of the day, Yogi Ferrell was unbelievable for the Kings, a plus 110.3 as their bench eviscerated the San Antonio Spurs, while the worst net rating went to Ali Okobo of the Phoenix Suns. He got cooked by Harden through turnover after turnover and was a negative 71.6. Really, really poor stuff from Okobo, and he's done nothing to make me think that he will remain as the starting point guard on this team when Lonzo Ball arrives. Maybe. And just a quick, I didn't tweet about this guy, I'm going to mention it now. LeVar Ball, yeah, he's back in our... Stop asking him questions then. Simple as that. Don't ask him, what do you think of Lonzo going to New Orleans? You know what, LeVar? You've got nothing to do with it. If he gets traded to them, we want him to go to Phoenix. That's the ideal situation. That's great. I'd love that too. I'd also love $10 million in a giant house with a 5-car garage with enough cars to fill those spots. Doesn't matter if I can't control it. That's what I want. And if Lonzo gets traded to New Orleans, that's where he goes. And then they've got his restricted rights and they hold on to him. Simple as that. So... While he would be awesome in Phoenix, and he would be a top 40 guy if he can ever get on the court, top 30 guy maybe in Phoenix. You don't control that, LeVar, so shut up. Simple as that. Let's talk some injuries. Derrick White, initially it was reported as a heel injury, now it's been reported as a plantar fascia injury. He had a tear in his plantar fascia early in the season, cost him 4 weeks. This is the other foot. Now, some people have said that's a better sign. I think that is true, and it's also not true, as confusing as that may sound. Yes, re-injuring the same plantar fascia would be a problem. But if you're having a plantar fascia injury on both sides of your body, that indicates to me that maybe there is a structural issue, a gait-based issue, a way about the way you play that makes you more susceptible to these problems. And that's a bit more of a long-term concern. Maybe it's a better short-term prognosis, but maybe it's a long-term thing that the way your body is set up, that you're more prone to these issues. At the moment, he's been ruled out for today's game and for the next 2 games. The Spurs are on their rodeo road trip. And that lasts like 7 games. He hasn't been ruled out for the second portion of that. We don't know the severity. I would guess it's going to cost weeks, not days here for Derrick White. I'm not dropping him just at this point. I want to hear more about it. But if he is out for weeks, then it is a problem. If he's out up until the All-Star break, and then you get that week off to recover, that's a good thing. And then I would probably hold. But again, if you're in 7th or 6th and you need to hold on to a playoff spot, can you deal with zeros? But is your league a weekly league where you can put the zeros on the bench and they act as pseudo-injured reserve spots? There's so many different nuanced decisions. I can't come out to you and say, you must drop Derrick White, you must hold Derrick White, because you've got to be able to understand all the different peculiarities about how your league looks, how your team looks, how your settings are set up, how your rosters are set up, all those different things. So he's not a blanket drop. He's not a blanket hold. I would lean towards holding him until we hear more information. But once we hear that information, then things can come a little bit more crystallized. On a positive side of things, some guys ready to return. Cody Zeller is probable with that hand fracture. He should be ready to play in Tuesday's games. Jonas Valanciunas is doubtful with his own broken hand. That means he probably won't play, but he is coming closer to a return. He was putting up close to 12-team value before that hand injury, so you could have a look at grabbing him. Karis LeVert. Also, it was reported by Woj that he is likely to return before the All-Star break. Now, when he returns, I would imagine it would be in a minimal role. And then after the All-Star break, full systems go. So LeVert is a clear must-add. Now, Zeller wasn't a must-add player before his injury, so you're not just, oh man, I've got to go grab Cody Zeller. Hey, he was playing okay numbers, and he probably was close to a 12-team guy if you needed that high field goal percentage with some solid blocks. So that could help. But LeVert is a must-add guy. Now, we are still a couple of weeks away from the All-Star break. The trade deadline is not the All-Star break like it used to be. So that is worth mentioning, and we got the trade deadline this week, but All-Star is still a couple of weeks after that, so we've got a couple of week window for LeVert to return. He could be back this week, though. So you got to go and add him. On the negative side of things, he says he's healthy and recovered from his ACL, but he won't play this season. Or he didn't actually say he won't play, but the Mavericks, the reports coming out of there is he won't play this season, as Dallas looks not to get him recovered from this ACL, but to transform his body to prevent future injuries. They've had issues not issues, but they've had experience with this in the past, dealing with guys like Dirk Nowitzki, the taller, thinner body types, and that's what Porzingis is. So they're going to put him on an extensive workout regime to try and get him back or get him into the shape that can protect that 7'3" frame as he gets ready to make his Mavericks debut in September next season in the preseason scenarios. So holding him is not recommended, obviously, because maybe they pull a shift in, he does come back. Maybe it's for 3 or 4 games in April. It's not going to be for a significant role. He says he feels great. He says he feels bouncy, but they're not going to get him out there. They are at this point, from the reports that I've heard coming from close to the team, is that they are just working on his body in an injury prevention type of scenario, so he is ready to go, so they can offer him that max contract in July, and then he's ready to roll alongside Luka Doncic for the next 5 to 10 seasons. So that's not great news for Porzingis this year. Great long term. The Baptist, John Collins, suffered a cut on his face today. He wasn't able to return. I don't imagine that's anything serious. While Devin Booker had to sit out the end of the Suns-Rockets game due to a hamstring cramp. Now, he said it was fine. He's dealt with multiple hamstring injuries already this season. He thinks he'll be fine for Wednesday against Utah. But players talk shit. Coaches talk shit all the time. So we're going to want to monitor this scenario. Just today, I recalled that when Jamal Murray hurt his ankle 10 days ago, the doctor, Michael Malone, said, "Oh, he's fine. He could have come back in if he wanted to." Jamal Murray, "No, I'm good." He hasn't played the last 6 games, and he's been out 10 days, and it doesn't really look all that close to him coming back. So remember, players and coaches, they talk shit all the time about injuries. This is twice he's dealt with this cramp in his hamstring or hamstring strain. It's a real worry, so just be cautious on that with Devin Booker. Let's move into these games now and look at what went down across the slate of games on Monday to start this week 17 in the NBA. The first game we look at is Jamal Murray's Denver Nuggets. They got smacked by the Pistons. There was no Paul Millsap, no Gaz Harris. No Jamal Murray. Nick Jokic was limited by some foul issues, only played 26 minutes, 16, 3 and 4 with 3 steals for Jokic. But Trey Lyles, he stepped up, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 2 triples, 3 assists, and Mason Plumlee, 15, 11 and 6 in his 33 minutes. They took all of Millsap's minutes and some of Jokic's minutes there. Of course, that's not a long-term scenario. Monty Morris was great again, 18, 2 and 3. Malik Beasley did what he does, 16 points on 46% shooting, hit threes, and did nothing else. I've seen a lot of people get really, who do I add, Morris or Beasley? Long term, there's no value. I don't see any value with these guys. As soon as Murray and Harris come back, they're going to be limited. And you can say, oh yeah, Harris has been injured so much, they're going to limit his minutes. And that might be true. But that also means that the minutes that he gets limited and plays 26 a night, Beasley plays 24 a night. And in 24 minutes a night, he's not a viable player. So for the short term, by all means, Morris is a better fantasy player than Beasley. I think Harris is also closer to a return than Jamal Murray. But long term, and I just went on a whole rant about long term doesn't mean anything. But depending on you're probably still 3 weeks away from playoffs, and both these guys are going to be back by the time the playoffs start, and that's going to really impact the value that both Monty Morris and Malik Beasley have. Will Barton, 10, 3 and 7. The shot's not there. The 1-1 was nice. I do worry about him a little bit, but he's still a must-roster guy. On to the Pistons. Drummond was great, 27 and 12 in just 26 minutes, but they didn't need to play any of their guys big minutes with a back-to-back coming up. 23 minutes only for Griffin, 22 minutes for Reggie Jackson, who's routinely been playing mid-30s in minutes. I don't think there was anything to really pay too much attention to, but of course, even in this blowout, they still only gave the Shark 13 minutes.
Baby shark,
Bruce Brown started, played 13 minutes, and then did not too much else. The Duck, Luke Kennard, had 14 points in his 24 minutes. If he gets 30 a night, he is going to be good. Dwayne Casey refuses to do that because we've got the new man, Langston Galloway.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
And he was good here, 18 points and 3 triples. That just means we're going to get him scoring 18 points in his next 7 games combined, because that is the way and the life of Langston Galloway. Let's move on now to the next game of the day on Monday. And it was the Atlanta Hawks and the Washington Wizards. The Hawks win 137-129. My man, Pants, Kevin Huerter, 19-5-4 with 5 triples and a steal on 6 of 10 shooting. What's he doing available in 70% of leagues? Fingers out of assholes. Go and grab him. I don't know why he's still sitting there. Kent Bazemore played 16 minutes, and Bazemore was okay. 11 points, 2 steals and a block. That's where his value comes in those defensive numbers. But he's not going to get big minutes on this Hawks team. It's just not going to happen. And he might get traded to a better team, almost definitely. And he'll probably find himself in a larger role. But will he get 29 minutes, 28 minutes a night? That's the question you've got to consider when stashing him. With Collins out and the Undertaker Dwayne Dedmon battling foul trouble, he fouled out in 20 minutes. The Wizard, Omari Spellman, had 16 and 10 with 4 triples in 30 minutes. He's enticing. We know that Dedmon's a massive chance to get traded, and I've talked about Spellman as being a stash guy. He's also inconsistent as anything, and Alex Len's likely to come in and take some of these minutes. But I think they'd like to see what the Wizard can provide, and he is a worthy stash guy, and this was strong, but he's just as likely to do jack shit in the next game. Vince Carter did not play at all in the first half, and then when the Baptist went out, he came in and played 16 second half minutes, scored 16 points and had 4 triples with 2 steals, but he is not necessarily an every night player, while the artist formerly known as Taurean Prince, 21 points, 5 triples, 2 assists and a steal, 7 of 10 shooting is unrealistic, but I do believe that Prince is a 12-team league player. Lynn had a nice 11-4-4, but I think he's going to be gone soon. While Trae Young, who'd been really good lately, he was the opposite of really good, and that's really bad. 10 points on 13 shots. That's 15%. 10 assists is still nice. The 4 rebounds is pretty strong as well from Trae, but it wasn't his best performance. For the Wizards, let's talk Geordie McRae. 26 minutes for him, 20 points on 73% shooting. He also had a Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
2 steals, 2 blocks, and 2 triples. McRae's been playing well. I've talked about him as that weird points streaming type of guy in moderate to deeper leagues with the lack of guards on this team. This, of course, is fluky. He's not going to get 2 steals or 2 blocks really ever again. He's not going to shoot 73%. Shit, he probably won't even get 11 shots and score 20 points all that often. But it's interesting that he was able to do this. He looks strong. He is a two-way guy, so he's somewhat limited there, although we're getting back to the point where he's just going to be able to play most nights anyway, given there's only a couple of months left in the season, and the 45-day rule ends when the G League regular season ends, which is before the NBA regular season. Strong from McRae, not a 12-team ad. Thomas Satoransky, I don't know why Scott Brooks hates this bloke. He always finds whatever guy he can find to take minutes away. Last year, it was Ty Lawson in one of the dumbest coaching moves you'll ever see. Shout out to Jim Boylan. This year, it was McRae that took these minutes. Early in the season, we had anyone coming in and taking minutes away from Satoransky. Now, he had 11, 7, and 9 with a 1-1 on his way to a triple-double. I'm still holding him, and some of his limited minutes have been due to blowouts, but Brooks has shown time and time again that he will frustrate us with Satoransky's minutes. Jeff Green.
My name is Jeff.
26, 5, and 5 in 36 minutes. He's providing solid enough 12-team league value without being a high priority ad, but it's solid enough value. While Otto Porter, 13 and 8, 2 blocks, 1 triple, and of course the shots didn't go in, including from the free throw line, which is really unusual to be 3 of 6 from the line for Porter. Beal had 27, 6 and 6, and Ariza was good as well, 25, 4 and 5, and played 43 minutes, and still they couldn't get over the line against the Wizards. Quick note on Tom Bryant, he played 12 minutes. You move on from him. I feel pretty comfortable at saying he's a droppable type of a player. Morris and Howard are going to come back at some point. Well, I assume Morris will. Howard, I'm not so sure about. But if you're only getting 12 minutes in a situation like this, then it doesn't bode well for him in the future. And his handling by Brooks this season has been pretty disappointing as well. The next game we look at, the Bucks, they smacked the Nets 113-94. I talked about this yesterday, that if the Bucks got up big, the minutes would be limited, and that was the case. Just 32 for Yanni. He had 30, 15 and 9 with 3 blocks, so massive there. Eric Bledsoe, Another good performance, 15-3 after missing last game due to that Achilles soreness, 5 steals and a block. Everyone absolutely shits themselves when they see Achilles soreness. Oh, but I've got to do something. Achilles soreness doesn't mean a tear. He missed one game. We've seen many, many situations this season where guys have Achilles soreness and they miss one game. So don't overly panic, but use it to your advantage. If someone does have Achilles soreness, maybe try to buy low. Bledsoe's been a buy low target for lots of the year, and he's really coming on strong now. Lopez had 2 triples and 8 points with a block. Brogdon had 16 and 8, and Chrissy Middleton 12, 8 and 4. But everyone bar Giannis was under 30 minutes. For the Nets, Jarrett Allen blocked 4 shots, only played 24 minutes, while Ed Davis only played 7 minutes. But this was that much of a blowout that Jana Musa played 8 minutes, and big source Alan Williams got 6 minutes. That should tell you all you need to know. And even in a blowout, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson just saw 20 minutes. I think any 12-team ideas you had, flights of fancy on Rondé, should probably be extinguished. We also had 15 Mitch Creek minutes. There was no Smokin' Joe Harris, no Karis LeVert, no Spencer Dinwiddie, no Jared Dudley, no Alan Crabb. So a bunch of guys out for this Nets team. Shabazz Napier, he started 15, 4 and 4. It's almost identical to what he's been doing off the bench. Unfortunately, he shot 27%, but he should be rostered until Dinwiddie returns at least, while Trevion Graham started once more at power forward. And when Dudley returns, it's going to be interesting to see how they run that Dudley, Graham, Hollis-Jefferson power forward dynamic. Theo Pinson also looked pretty good, 10 and 8 in his 26 minutes, but those minutes are likely a function of the absentees. The next game we look at, the Pelicans, they narrowly lost to the Pacers, 109-107. Big Daz Collison, 22, 4 and 6. Really, his season's been resurrected by the injury to Victor Oladipo. Well, Domantas Sabonis had really been struggling, couldn't put the ball in the hoop at all. 7 of 9 here. It was always going to turn around. 16 and 13, while Miles Turner, 15 and 9, 2 steals and 3 blocks. Big from him, but he couldn't hit shit in this one. Thad Young's strong season continues, or strong run continues, 14, 5 and 4, while Corey Joseph started and didn't do too much. He's not a high priority 12-team league guy. And I cannot believe how bad Tyreke Evans is. 9, 2 and 2 in 19 minutes for Tyreke. And before you come and tell me that last season was a contract year, this season is also a contract year. He's on a 1-year deal. 9, 2 and 2 for Tyreke. It is really not working out for him as well. Bogdanovic struggled with his shooting. Otherwise, it would have been a really good night. 14, 1 and 4. For the Pelicans, we've got to keep holding Jolly Okafor, who's putting up big numbers. 25 and 13, a steal and a block, and 69% shooting.
Giggity!
Drew Holiday was great at 19, 11 and 9. And my man, Check Diallo. Really interested to see where this goes with Diallo. 12 and 14, a steal, a block. I've always liked him. Finally, he's getting an opportunity. But as soon as Davis or Randall or Mirotic comes back, then he's going to be assigned to the scrap heap, as Gentry has done all throughout his career. First career start for Kenrick Williams. Wasn't as good as some of his other games. 13 shots is interesting. Only 8 points is terrible, but 8 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals, and a block with 2 triples. So you can see the framework of a really good fantasy player there. And with Etuan Moore, not good, and being held out for rest for whatever God knows reason, he's been dealing with injuries and also been not good. Solomon Hill being terrible. Kenrick is a very, very interesting hold guy. Not much else to really talk about. Frankie Jackson had a real stinker, 5 points in his 23 minutes as the starting point guard with Alfred Payton out. Let's go to the next game. The Houston Rockets, they beat the Suns 118-110. Chrissy Paul was back. He played 33 minutes, a bit of a surprise there. 18, 5 and 4 with 5 steals. While Jimmy Ennis started for Eric Gordon, 13, 2 and 2 and 4 steals. This is a best case scenario for Ennis. Don't get overly excited. While my man, Ken Farida, by my man, I use that very loosely because I haven't been the biggest fan of him. But massive performance here and a must roster player. But remember, he has no real way of being able to keep this up when Clint Capella returns. Could they play alongside each other? Ugh, that's a disaster in a D'Antoni offense. Could Capella play 30 minutes? Yeah, that means Freed plays 18 minutes, and that's excluding any minutes they want to go with PJ Tucker as a small ball center. So while it's great what he's doing now, 17 and 14, if you are in a playoff spot where you're solid and you're looking for 3 weeks in the future and you want to get a top 70 guy back for Fareed, I would do it in a heartbeat. I could be wrong, and for some reason they could decide to go with Fareed over Capella, which would seem stupid, but they could do it. I just don't see the likelihood of that happening for Big Ken Fareed. Austin Rivers and Gerald Green didn't do too much. On to the Suns, 34 minutes for DeAndre Ayton, 15 and 11. Of course, that limits what big Richaun Holmes can do. Now, Holmes, he still had 11 points, but 14 minutes is just not going to cut it to me, and I think he is just an absolute luxury to have on your 12-team leagues. I know there are plenty of people who talk about fantasy who have an opinion in the opposite direction to me, and I've got no problem with them having that opinion. You guys can have different opinions. I just don't see it for Rashawn. I just don't want to be steadfastly holding on to a guy whose value is going to come if DeAndre Ayton gets limited to 29 minutes. Okobo struggled, 2 points in his 18 minutes. It's safe to say he's not a 12-team league guy. Well, Devin Booker, that hamstring cramp limited him to just 33 minutes. The production was fine, though, 19, 7, and 5, while McCall Bridges, who recently had been putting up big offensive numbers, didn't. 7 points, but 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals. Big stuff. 38 minutes. He should be on a 12-team roster. Kelly Oubre should as well. 23 points with 3 steals. And Joshy Jackson, he probably also should be. Of course, we have to remember that TJ Warren is out, Big Tony. So when he comes back, how does it impact these guys? They shouldn't, and they probably will, but they shouldn't be giving big minutes to TJ. He should be playing like a 26, 27 minute a night role. Let's see what Oubre, Jackson, and Bridges can all do alongside Booker. But they will almost assuredly give Warren some of those minutes back. And it's going to impact those guys, but they're all worth holding at this stage. The last game of the day was the San Antonio Spurs getting smacked by the Kings, 127-112. Aldridge had 22 and 9, and DeRozan 24 and 4 with 4 assists as well, and shot the ball well. No Derrick White meant that Bryn Forbes slid over to point guard. Forbes is not a point guard. We've established that fact. He's also not a 12-team must-roster guy. His numbers and role didn't really change with White out. He was getting 31 minutes a night beforehand. He played 32 here and had 12 points with 7 boards with a steal and 0 assists as a starting point guard. This is just who he is. He's a 14-team league sort of guy. The guy whose value increases is Davis Bertans, who played 34 minutes here, 11 and 8 with 3 triples. If he's going to play that sort of a role, he's on the radar as a 12-team league guy. Pat Mills also got 25 minutes, 12 points with a steal and 2 triples. But no one's going to fully take all of what White was doing because no one does what White does in one package, and that's what makes him so intriguing as a fantasy option. For the Kings, De'Aaron Fox, Big Diazza, he had 26 and 6 with a 111 and shot the ball really well. Budrick Hield had 18, 8 and 5, and Iman Shumpert is getting extra minutes with Bogdanovic struggling. 13, 6 and 6 with 3 threes for Shumpert. He's been at times a 12-team league guy on his ability to get you some steals and some threes. Now he's adding assists in. He's that perfect, hey, let's stream in type of a guy who can work in 12 and 14-team leagues, while Harry Giles, very interested to see what happens with Willie Cauley-Stein, who's struggling at the moment. I think Willie is a real risk to be traded at the trade deadline, or at least see his minutes taper down as the season goes on and Giles is push up. I wouldn't say Giles is a must-hold guy or must-stash guy, but with a couple of days to go before the trade deadline, you could do a lot worse than trying that out and seeing what happens. Probably a 5% chance of it working out, but it's absolutely something we should be at least considering this close to the trade deadline. All right, let's move on now and talk some DFS action coming in to Tuesday. Let's go with the perfect lineup on DraftKings. Jimmy Harden and Geordie McRae, Jeff Green and Giannis Antetokounmpo, Mason Plumlee, Fanapants Kevin Huerter, Stan Johnson and Trevor Ariza for a total of $375.75, and that cost $49,600. On FanDuel, Jeremy Lin, Eric Bledsoe, Geordie McRae, Melbourne's own Geordie McRae, Jim Harden, Stan Johnson, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jeff Green, Marvin Bagley, and Mason Plumlee for a total of $395.5, and that cost $59,400. All right, let's take a look at DFS now for Tuesday. Looking at DraftKings pricing mainly, there are 8 games on the slate, so a pretty hefty night of games. In fact, sort of the perfect night of games. Most days this week actually have a pretty strong amount of games for DFS. The first game we look at has the potential to be a real blowout. The Boston Celtics on the road against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs are 12.5-point underdogs. The total is 214.5, and Kyrie Irving has already been ruled out for Boston, meaning we get another shot at a Terry Rozier game. Let's start off by looking at the point guards and Rozier. On DraftKings, Rozier is up to $6,700. And I think that takes away a little bit of the upside, not a little bit of the upside, all of the upside for Rozier. He still can be an okay cash play, but what I think will happen is his roster percentage will go up pretty significantly. But it's Rozier, Kyrie's out, we've got to roster him. But at that price, you're not getting this massive return on investment. It's not like he's coming in as a $5,000 price player. So you could be in a case where you can avoid him and still get pretty good results. For the Cavs, there's no Rodney Hood. Of course, we might get the debut of Wade Baldwin or Nick Stauskas, but Jordan Clarkson and Alec Burks, I think, get a boost here, $52 and $5,100 respectively for those guys. I'd be happy to use both of those guys. In fact, Burks has had a really solid floor, his lowest score in his last 5 has been 28 DraftKings points, which makes him good value. The Padawan Colin Sexton at $4,200. Played well against the Celtics this season, hasn't played well really against any other team, so he's really just a GPP guy. I'm not trusting him. While Marcus Smart at $5,300, one good game last time with Kyrie out, one stinker. He's coming off a strong game alongside Irving. He is a GPP upside guy with that 40-point upside, I believe. For the shooting guards, Jaylen Brown tends to excel when Kyrie is out, so I like him at $4,900. And David Nwaba, Stauskas, I'm not really feeling those guys. The shooting guards on the Cavs are all listed as point guard eligible as well. For the small forwards, Jace Tatum's at $5,800. I think that's a strong cash play. I'm not sure his upside is really high enough in a tournament, but massive value as a floor guy. While $5,400 for Marcus Morris also looks pretty strong on his floor. Well, if you're ever going to use Gordon Hayward, it should be a game that Kyrie sits. I'm not totally convinced that he is a must-roster guy, but at $5,000 with 35 to 40-point upside, there could be something there, but I think there are better options around. We don't know who is going to start necessarily for Hood at this point. Maybe it's Jerron Blossom game, who has had a 30-point game this season, and at $3,100, you'd take that. I think that's probably not necessarily risky thinking, but optimistic thinking, so probably end up fading him away. The big man, Larry Nance Jr. at $5,800, I think he's probably the guy that looks to start. I didn't mention this, Chetty Osman is also out for the Cavs, so I think Nance is almost a guarantee to start here, or a guarantee to get to 30 minutes, although Larry Drew has been known to dick around with Nance all season. $5,800 for Larry, I really like that, really hard to go past that too much. Vanilla Tice at $3,500. He had 22 points with Baines out last game. Not super into him, while Horford's at $6,600. And I would like Horford normally, but we know how cautious they've been with his minutes in this game. Is a blowout, then he will see limited playing time. Zizic at $5,500. The minutes have been really trending down for Zizic, but with Osman out, I think we'll see more Nance at power forward, and that could mean that Ante gets a lot more playing time. I'm still not super into him just because that price is relatively high. On FanDuel, Clarko, Nance, Jalen, Burks, all of those guys have strong value. It is always a risk with the blowout nature here, but with the Cavs, they're not really limiting their guys when they do get blown out, so that's a positive for those 3 of those 4 Cleveland guys that I mentioned there. And Jalen, I think his minutes will still push up even if the Celtics get a comfortable victory here. Let's go on to the next game. We are looking at the Clippers taking on the Hornets. No spread or total for this game. There was some doubt about whether Danilo Gallinari would be ready to return. He has been ruled out so far, or not so far, he's been ruled out now of this game, so he won't be back. So we're going to get more of that Gilgeous-Alexander, Beverly, Bradley 1-2-3 combination. At the point guard spot, you've got Malik Monk at $3,800, who is averaging 28 points per game over the last 3. I like the way everything's trending for Monk. I think he's more tournament than cash, but a sub $4,000 guy who could be a 30-point performer should get your attention. I like Kemba at 87 quite a bit. That's a strong play. And Patrick Beverly at 52. He's been really good with Gallinari out. The last couple haven't quite been there. He's still in play. I'd much rather take, say, Lou Williams, for example, at 7,300. Gilgeous-Alexander, also interesting, averaging 30 over his last 5, and with Gallinari ruled out again. At 4,400, Shea is a tournament option, but I don't have the full trust to use him as a cash guy. Tone Parker, that's not working for me. Batum's at 5,100, and he, at the moment, has been rock solid in cash. His lowest score in his last 5 has been 25 points. He's doing a lot more. I wouldn't say his upside is all that high, but for cash, I like what Batum is doing well. Bradley at 3,700. He had that little spike in production, Avery Bradley, but that has dropped way off, so I'm off him. And Jeremy Lamb the same. His minutes have really plateaued. Kid Gilchrist is at 3,600. I don't see much there. The Prison Mike Scott at 3,000. He's getting some minutes, but he's not really doing much. Marvin Williams, not working for me. Well, Toby Harris is listed as probable with a shoulder issue that's really bothered him the last couple of games. 7,900. He's been really good in most games without Gallinari, but that shoulder's bothered him, so I'll stay away from him here. Miles Bridges also. The big man Cody Zeller is likely to return. He's listed as probable. He's at 4,000, and before his injury, he was averaging 32 points over his last 3 games. At $4,000 in a very, very positive matchup for Zeller, Not a bad guy to have a look at. Remember, it was a hand injury, not a lower body injury, so he should still have been able to work out and keep his endurance levels up. Not that he was playing a ton of minutes anyway. I like Zala here a bit. Boban's at 3,500, and he is actually averaging 24 points over the last 3 games as they are giving him more minutes. Still don't fully want to trust Marjanovic, but at the moment things are working in his favour, no doubt about that. And then you've got the table Montrezl Harrell, which at a $6,600 price tag in a very positive matchup, he is absolutely on the board. Biyombo and Hernan Gomez for the Hornets are not. On FanDuel, I like Harrell a lot at 72. Kid Gilchrist is at 3,800. It's a massive positive matchup for him. We've seen power forwards go off against the Clippers pretty much all season. I'd still have a little bit of a doubt using him. That would also put Marvin Williams into the conversation on FanDuel at 5,500. His minutes have been pretty rock solid. He can be a little bit fluky in terms of production, but the matchup suits him. Kemba at 9,300 also looks okay. I think Shea at 6,400 is too expensive, and Lou Williams at 77 is pretty strong for the Clippers. Let's go on now to the next game. It is the Lakers. It's the Pacers. By the time you listen to this, in between when I've recorded it, the Lakers may have made a trade for Anthony Davis, meaning about 7 of their guys will be unable to play, so that's always a concern. When I woke up today, I thought, you know what, the chances of Anthony Davis getting traded seem higher, and in about the last 5 or 6 hours, it seems much, much lower. So I would have to guess that it doesn't happen. Also interesting that the Lakers have listed Ivica Zubac, Kyle Kuzma, the future MVP, as both probable, but they've also listed LeBron James as probable. He came back for that one game and then rested due to load management, and apparently he still may be resting his load in this game against the Pacers. Maybe they're sitting LeBron out because they're trading him. Of course, I'm talking shit. Tyson Chandler also listed as probable after resting in the last game. The one questionable guy for the Lakers is Josh the Hitman Hart with that knee tendonitis. If he is out, that boosts the value of Lance Stevenson and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. At point guard, Corey Joseph for the Pacers has been starting at shooting guard. He's doing very, very little in that role. 4,400 in a positive matchup makes you go, maybe. But I'd still only be looking at him as a tournament type of a player. Well, Dazza Collison, 6,400. Love what Daz has been doing recently. I think he's worth looking at. Aaron Holiday, probably not. Rajon Rondo at 6,800. I think he's been pretty good value at that sort of a salary, so he is in play, and his minimum salary has provided a strong floor in these trying injury-riddled circumstances for the Lakers. Tyreek's at 4,200. He has been absolutely horrendous. He's played well against the Lakers in the past, but I cannot trust anything that Evans is doing at this point, while Bojan Bogdanovic up to $6,000 on DraftKings. Maybe a bit high, but I don't dislike it here. There is some value, but I think there are better guys out there. One of the better guys that I would use is the $5,900 you would have to spend to put Brandon Ingram onto your roster. His form of late has been improved. He's shooting well, and I do like his scenario here, although the LeBron return puts a little bit of a cramp on that. Lance Stevenson only if trades goes down and he's somehow one of the last men standing. The Hitman Josh Hart, again, only if 6 guys get ruled out due to trades. For the small forwards, Kuzma's at 5,800. That's a strong fade for me. LeBron James at 10,700.
LeBron James.
Look pretty good for LeBron here. I think he can easily get you 55. I think he's a strong cash option. While Thad Young's at 6,100. He's just been giving 30 points after 30 points after 30 points. A pretty good cash option. The other big men, Sabonis at 56, turned it around in Monday's game. I like the option. We've seen centers go big against the Lakers all season. This at 5,600 for DeMontis. This has got 35 points written all over it. I like him a lot here. I like Turner a lot at 6,500. Very favorable prices, whereas the Lakers centers, McGee, Zubac, and Tyson Chandler, I don't see how we can rely on any of them with the way that Walton is using that rotation on those guys. On FanDuel, I think Miles at 73 looks good. Bogdanovic at 58, Sabonis at 63, even Corey Joseph at 45. They're probably the pick of the bunch. Daz Collison at 64 maybe doesn't have too much upside, but a really strong floor given the way that they are using him in Oladipo's absence. The next game is the Pistons. They're taking on the Knicks. The Pistons on a back-to-back, much like the Pacers were. They are 3-point favorites. Detroit, the total is 205. There's still a lot of confusion over how that Knicks rotation is going to look. We saw some interesting things in the first game after the trade, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to stick. Of course, it is David Fizdale, so anything that happened in the prior game is unlikely to happen as we move forward. Injury-wise, Mitchell Robinson missed last game due to an illness, so he is listed as probable. He should be ready to return, and that further complicates things. They run 3 centers: Robinson, DeAndre Jordan, and Luke Cornett. Does someone sit out? Is it the Cornetto? Do they just put DeAndre down to 18 minutes? I don't think so, but that is a possibility. At point guard, Dennis Smith Jr. is at 5,700. His first game in New York yielded 24 points in 26 minutes. I think he's a pretty good option here. Ish Smith, probably not going to be too interested there. While Reggie Jackson, the Pistons had a big blowout against the Nuggets, so we saw the minutes limited for Jackson, Drummond, and Griffin, and Jackson had been playing really, really well before that game. So I think this might be a scenario to look at Reggie, and maybe at 5,500 have people go off him if they're basing it strictly off that Denver performance. So I think that he's a worthy guy to look at. Alonzo Trier dropped 48 against the Pistons earlier this season. He's, of course, has been a victim to Fizdale's minutes of late, just 15 minutes in the last game, as they continue to develop the youth and limit the value or limit the playing time of their young guys. 4,700 for Trier. Really just a tournament. The Shark, Bruce Brown, Langston Galloway, Kadeem Allen, they're not going to do it for me. Reggie Bullock and Wes Matthews, I don't see any interest in either of those guys, although you could talk me into Wes Matthews as a tournament guy. He played 29 minutes in his debut for the Knicks, had 6 points, but still was out there for a lot of minutes, more than Dotson, more than Trier. And that could enable him to have a 25 or a 30-point performance, which would give value for a sub $4,000 price. The Duck, Luke Kennard, played well against Denver, but once he plays well in one game, Dwayne Casey decides that's enough and he's got to play in 15 minutes, so a little bit hard to get too interested there, and same with Damo Dotson. The Fort, Kevin Knox, is at 5,300. Not really doing enough to consider him a must-roster guy, just doesn't contribute in enough categories, and that salary is probably a little bit too high to utilize him with much confidence. Mario Hezonja has been strong lately at 4,500, and the uncertainty in his role, I don't really see the fit. While Stan Johnson went off against Denver, dropping 41 points at 3,500, that is fantastic. Putting trust in Stanley Johnson to do that repeatedly is unwise. For the big man, DeAndre is at 6,200, still a really strong price for Jordan. It's actually come up $800, but I still like that salary there. While Drummo at 83. Centers against the Knicks have been strong. Why they've been playing Cantor, when they've been playing a bit more of guys like Mitchell Robinson, that value has come back down. But DeAndre Jordan, in a quick note, is not a good defensive player. So this is an opportunity for Drummond, coming off a big game against Denver where he got rest in, to really go in for a 45, 50-point performance again. So I do like Drummo a bit here. Blakey Griffin at 8,800, a strong option for him to have a big 50-pointer as well. I like both of those guys here. Vonleh, whatever the opposite of like is, that's where I'm at with him. While Mitchie Robinson at 4,000, I just think the potential of a three-headed center screw-up from Fizdale limits what he can do. Over on FanDuel, I like Trier at 4,000, really just a tournament guy. He had 5 points last game, which of course doesn't get it done at $4,000, but if he has 40 points, then it smashes it. And the unknown there makes it hard to roster him. Dennis Smith up to 68, hard to roster him outside of tournaments. Dennis Smith at 6,800 is probably too high to use in cash, while Drummond at 93 looks alright, and Knox at 51 is a more favourable option on FanDuel than how he looks on DraftKings. Let's go now on to the next game, Game 5 of the day. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Wolves are 1.5-point favourites. The total 203.5, the lowest total of the day. For the Grizzlies, Jermichael Green and Joakim Noah are both questionable, while Garrett Temple is doubtful. Then and Kyle Anderson's out as well. So some minutes opening up there on the wing and some opportunities, obviously, potentially appearing in that front court as well. Some real issues there. Derrick Rose is out for the Wolves as that ankle continues to bother him, and I just don't think he's ever going to be fully healthy again. And Jeff Teague.
My name is Jeff.
He is also doubtful in this game, meaning we're going to get another dose of Jared Bayless madness. At point guard, Mike Conley's at 8,200. He is absolutely crushing at the moment. I like this matchup for him a bit, while Bayless himself at 54, an absolute must-roster guy with both of those other players out. So really strong options for them. Shelvin Mack at 4,500. He's getting minutes with Temple and Anderson out, but he's not really converting that into much value. Javon Carter, Isaiah Kanan, not really doing it for me. Justin Holiday at 47, he's been piss poor most of the time in Memphis, but 30 points in 37 minutes, and that 37 minutes is what is key here for Justin Holiday. with Temple and Anderson both out, there is a real opportunity for him again as a tournament guy to return value. Andy Wiggins at $6,000. I actually don't mind him here in this one. He's been disappointing at times, but in general, he can get you to around that 33 point mark, which is great at 6,000. Okogie at 36 isn't working for really anybody. Julian Washburn is a player. And then we move on to the small forwards. Luol Deng at 3,300. Yes, I'm talking about Luol Deng, and no, you shouldn't be rostering him. Bruno Caboclo started last game, a chance to start again at 3,600 only for tournaments. I'd be interested there. For the big men, big Karl Anthony Towns at 9,700. I'm in on Towns. Now, Gasol has caused him issues in the past, so that gives you an element of pause, but I still like him, while 5,200 for Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a very nice price. More tournaments, given his uncertainty with foul issues. Taj is at 42. I'm not interested in that. Gasol at 77. Has really dominated Towns in the past, averaging 49 the last 3 times against him. So I think that should give you some element of hope in using Gasol here. And if Green and or Noah are out, Ivan Rabb at 3,600 will become a very, very interesting guy. He had a 30-point game earlier this season. And if both of those blokes are out, we could see him with a 25-minute game, which gives us 25, 26 points. And that, of course, would be pretty interesting to take a look at there for big old Ivan Rabb. The FanDuel side of things, I think Holiday at 45 looks strong. Wiggins at 61 I like. Townsy at 10.7. Even Shelvin Mack at 4,000 as not a bad low-price cash guy to get me 20 to 23, which, again, it's not great, but it is an option there if you're looking to squeeze some other high-price guys in. Conley's at 9,000, and I'd feel okay about putting him in despite the low total for this matchup. Next up, we've got the Magic and the Thunder. The Thunder are 10-point favourites. The total is a very juicy 224.5. We know Johnny Isaac has been putting up some strong performances lately. Hopefully, he is able to keep that going. At point guard, Westbrook's at 11.4. I love this for Westbrook. He should be looking at 60 points pretty comfortably. Well, Dennis Schroeder at 4,800 has also been on a strong run, averaging 29 over his last 5. There's been some fluky shooting performances in there, but I don't think that he should be totally ruled out. DJ Augustin is always a touch fluky. I'd probably leave him alone. Evan Fournier is at 52, has got a pretty decent record going up against the Magic, going up against the Thunder, so I don't mind him, but probably more tournaments given his inconsistency. Well, Terry Ross at 5,000 really stunk it up last game, but prior to that, he'd been killing it. I feel okay if you want to go back to him in cash. The matchup's all right. Terry Ferguson, John Simmons, but Simmons is questionable in this game, and his minutes will just go to Wes Wundu if he is out. Neither of those guys do it for me. Aaron Gordon, Big Azza, 6,200. I love this one for Gordo. He's averaging 53 the last 3 times out against the Thunder. He's giving us, even in a bit of a slump at the moment, 29 a game. 62 seems a strong price point for him, while Paulie George at 10-2, just lock for 50 points, and potentially a 60-point guy. Really think he comes in good. While Johnny Isaac, 5,300 for John, averaging 35 in the last 3. I think that 53 is maybe too high. Well, it definitely takes my confidence away from him. He could easily get it, but it probably restricts him more to tournaments. Mo Bamba is out.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And that means we're going to get Kem Birch getting those minutes at 3,100. Could Birch get 20 points? Sure. Could that work? Maybe. I'm not all that into him. Steve Adams at 62, I am though, while Nikola Vucevic at 9,600. He's just getting us 50 a night almost every night. So I like him quite a bit here. Jeremy Grant at 53 is also a pretty rock-solid cash guy with maybe limited upside. Over on the old FanDuel, Gordo, Vucevic, Westbrook, all of those guys look pretty good. Paulie George at 11.5 is maybe a little bit too high, but it's not egregiously bad. Terry Ross at 5,000 also comes in pretty strong. Same with Steve Adams. And Jeremy Grant at 57 I don't mind as a cash option on FanDuel. Next up, we look at the Toronto Raptors taking on the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers are 4.5-point favourites. The total is 229. Kyle Lowry has been ruled out, so we won't get him try to foolishly fight Ben Simmons. Amir Johnson is probable for the Sixers, but he won't play. JJ Redick is probable after resting last game, while Jonas Valanciunas has been upgraded to doubtful, meaning his return is obviously pretty much on the horizon. Freddie Van Vliet's at 4,600. Love this with Lowry out. That is a massive play to me. While Benny Simmons at 86. I think both of these point guard guys are absolutely cash and tournament options. Shake Milton, TJ McConnell, Delon Wright, Landry Shamet. If I'm going to take one of those guys, it's going to be Shamet at 33 because he's shown that 40-point upside, but that would be just a weird tournament type of a scenario. General Soreness, Jimmy Butler, really playing well at the moment. He's at 7,500. Happily using him. Redick, Danny Green, not so much. Norm Powell, CJ Miles. Now, Miles had 27 points last game with Lowry out. I think that's unrealistic to expect that to happen again. Kawhi Leonard, the fun guy, 9,300, averaging 55 against the Sixers. I love a stud that's under 10,000, so Kawhi is a guy that I'm pretty interested in. And then the big man, Serge at 6,200, Serge Ibaka, averaging 37 over the last 5. A big positive matchup for him, given how Sixers have allowed some good numbers to opposition big men. I like Serge here. I like Embiid, of course, at 10.5. And then with Baby Neck Wilson Chandler out, Mike Muscala will likely get the start, and Jonah Bolden comes in as well. Neither of those guys are high priority. If I'm going to take one, it's probably going to be Bolden, but even then, I'm not super into it. While Pascal Siakam at 6,300. Love what Siakam does and has done well against Philadelphia. I just feel that price seems like it's $300, $400 too expensive to really be a significant value option. On FanDuel, Van Vliet, we're loving at 5,900, but that is getting to that spot where you go, is it too high now? Is it taking the value away? That is a concern there with Fred. I like Kawhi, I like Embiid, I like Ibaka at 72 as well. And the 68 for Siakam is a more favourable price than where he sits on DraftKings. The last game we're going to take a look at, the Miami Heat and the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers are 7.5 point favourites and the total is 213. Rocket Rodney Hood in some new colours here, and he will be in the rotation immediately. Now, who misses out remains to be seen. Will it be Jake Layman? Will it be Myers Leonard? Will it be Mo Harkless? Will it be Seth Curry? Who knows how they're going to run things. My guess is that they'll just take Layman out of the rotation. They'll take a few minutes away from Harkless. You'll get a few off Myers Leonard, and you'll get a few off Seth Curry to give Hood about low 20s in minutes. That's how I guess this is going to play out. Yusuf Nurkic missed last game due to knee soreness. He is also not on the injury report anymore, so that's obviously a big positive there for him and for the team. Lillard's at 8,900. I absolutely love this for Lillard. He's averaging 52 over the last 5, and you're at sub 9,000. That is super hard to ignore. Justice Winslow's at 5,800, has been nowhere near that player of late. Tyler Johnson at 41 is barely playing, even though he's starting. Only 24-minute average over the last 3. Only 15 points as well. Tough to rely upon him. Tough to rely upon anyone in this Heat rotation, to be honest. CJ McCollum is up to $7,100. His last 5 games have been strong, averaging 41 points. There's been some different circumstances in there which have allowed that to happen, so I'm not super into him at that salary. Dion Waiters, his minutes are pushing up. He's at 3,800. It would only be tournaments. Well, Josh Richardson really not giving us what we need, and 5,900, he's a fade guy. As for Rocket Rodney Hood at 3,500, he is and always will be a tournament-only guy. He's just too inconsistent. Evan Turner, that's not going to do it for me. Small forwards, the Chief, Al-Farouq Aminu, 4,800. The matchup is okay here for Aminu, but I'm not super sold on him as an option. And then you got Flamin' Mo Harkless at 3,800. That's not going to do it either. The big man, Kelly Olynyk, back in the rotation and averaging 29 over the last 3. He's at 3,900. I love it. Positive matchup. Spoelstra's going to dick us around almost definitely, but with Derrick Jones Jr. out and the new rotation they're running, Olynyk's a big part, and we know that when he plays, he will put up minutes. It's a simple equation that's been true every year of his career. And while he's playing, you've got to consider using him. You've got Bam Adebayo at 4,200 and Yusuf Nurkic at 81. Now, I'll use Nurk at 81, no problem. The Bam-Whiteside scenario is tough. Now, Whiteside has played well against Portland in the past. He averages 45 in the last 3 encounters, and he's priced pretty comfortably at 6,900.
Giggity!
Do you use him? Well, you'd have to have pretty big balls to use Whiteside in a cash lineup. Tournaments, sure, he can go for 45 pretty easily, but it is a massive, massive risk every time you look to roster Hassan Whiteside. Over on FanDuel, we're looking at Waiters as a $3,900 upside guy. Lillard at 99 loses a lot of the appeal from DraftKings, but it's still a pretty good option. Olynyk at 45 again loses that upside with $1,000 tacked onto his price, but still some value there. Same with Whiteside at 7,200. Let's go through now, have a look at some studs and some value plays. On DraftKings, I like Simmons as a stud, and a value is Fred Van Vliet. On FanDuel, my stud is the fun guy, Kawhi Leonard, and my value is Jordy Clarkson. On Yahoo, my stud for the second night in a row is Andre Drummond, and the value play is minimum salary Justin Holiday. And on DraftStars, my stud is Nikola Vucevic, and my value play is Larry Nance Jr. Make sure, guys, you are subscribed to this podcast, whether it's on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. But we are going to be doing a real big live trade deadline show, so make sure you are sticking around for that. It'll be broadcast live over my YouTube channel as well. Me and David Locke co-hosting it. It'll be real life stuff plus fantasy takes in there also, so make sure you are tuning in for that. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball, and follow the Locked On Podcast Network at Locked On NBA Net. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Steve Kerr.